According to Reuters and the Washington Post, it's a two-part story that I'm just going to get right down to the essence of. There's a lot going on here in America. And the headline reads in Reuters: Trump faces federal charges for efforts to overturn the 2020 election. The four-count indictment charges Trump with conspiring to defraud the U.S. by preventing Congress from certifying Biden's victory and to deprive voters of their right to a fair election. Now, for a more detailed version of what these charges mean here, I'm going to read what the Washington Post has to say about this right now. Just give me a second and I'll have the story pulled up here. So it's a sad day in America. It's nothing to be happy about and to rejoice about. Because too many individuals think that this is a game and that this is a joke, and it's not. So according to the Washington Post, here are the four January 6 charges against Trump and what they mean. Former President Donald Trump. Now let me just say this before I start reading what the four charge indictment means. Like any other citizen, like any other individual, constitutionally wise, former President Trump is presumed innocent until proven guilty. According to the Washington Post, here are the four January 6 charges against Trump and what they mean. Former President Donald Trump has been charged with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to obstruct an official proceeding, obstructing a congressional proceeding, and conspiracy against rights in connection with what prosecutors allege was a plan to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Here's what that means. What are the charges? Well, charge number one: conspiracy to defraud the U.S. government. Conspiracy is a catcall crime covering any scheme between two or more people to break federal law or defraud the U.S. government. Conspiracies don't need to be successful to be criminal, and perpetrators can be held responsible if they join the conspiracy at any stage. In this case, prosecutors allege Trump conspired with six others to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election. The co-conspirators are not named, nor are they charged, but five of the six descriptions match attorneys Rudolph Giuliani, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, and Kenneth Chesebro, and Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark. The sixth is described as a political consultant. The indictment says Trump attempted to overturn the election results in myriad ways by pushing state officials in certain swing states that broke for Biden to ignore the results and take steps to make Trump the winner, by organizing slates of, quote, fake electors, close quote, who falsely certified that Trump had won seven states by pushing the Justice Department to endorse the false claims of election fraud, by pressuring Vice President Mike Pence to change the election results, and by exploiting the violent riot on January 6th to try to keep lawmakers from confirming Biden's election. Prosecutors will have to prove deceit was used to undermine or interfere with the work of the federal government. The indictment repeatedly says that Trump knew his fraud claims were false, having been told by campaign staff, White House officials, and state governments there was no evidence for them. He is specifically accused of lying to the Georgia Secretary of State about supposed ballot tampering after being told by the Justice Department that it never happened. Giuliani is accused of lying to the crowd at Trump's rally on January 6, falsely claiming that 5 state legislators had written begging for a review of their election results. Giuliani is also accused of telling the Arizona House Speaker there was enough evidence of fraud to justify switching the state's votes from Biden to Trump. 8 days later, Giuliani allegedly admitted, quote, "We don't have the evidence, but we have lots of theories," close quote. conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, defined as for the same conduct used to charge with conspiracy, Trump is charged with specifically with conspiring to obstruct the congressional confirmation of Biden's victory on January 6th. So number two would be obstruction of an official proceeding. Trump was also charged with a substantive obstruction count for tampering to block Congress from confirming Biden's victory on January 6th. The same charge is the most common felony charge used against rioters who stormed the U.S. Capitol. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit has split on how to define this crime, but a majority of judges who have weighed in agree that at least some conduct at the Capitol counts as illegal obstruction. The dissenting Judge Gregory Katis argued that the crime had to include tampering with documents. Prosecutors alleged Trump confirmed or committed the crime in part orchestrating the creation of fake election certificates and trying to get Congress to accept them, as well as by pressuring the Justice Department to send out a letter falsely claiming there were problems with the vote in Georgia or other states. Count number three of the indictment, conspiracy against rights. This charge criminalizes any joint effort to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate people to stop them from enjoying their constitutional or federal rights. It was passed after the Civil War when white vigilante groups such as the Ku Klux Klan were terrorizing black Southerners who sought to vote or otherwise enjoy their rights under the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Its use was limited for many decades by Supreme Court decisions, but prosecutors brought the charge in the 20th century in cases involving racial attacks on civil rights activists and ballot box stuffing. It was also used against a Nixon aide who authorized the burglary of a psychiatrist's office after the Pentagon Papers leak. Here, prosecutors argued Trump conspired to stop people from exercising, quote, their right to vote and have one vote counted, and have one's votes counted, rather, close quote. They must prove that was Trump's intent. And the fourth count of the indictment, what kind of sentence does he face? Conspiracy to defraud the government is punishable by up to 5 years in prison. Conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding and obstructing an official proceeding are both punishable by up to 20 years in prison. The civil rights law carries a sentence of up to 10 years in prison. Unless the crime involves murder, rape, or kidnapping, successful or attempted, in which case the maximum punishment is the death penalty. Prosecutors are not arguing that Trump's actions led to any of the deaths that occurred during or after the January 6th attack. Technically, each conviction could be sentenced with consecutive terms, leading to decades-long sentences. In practice, federal sentences are almost never as high as the maximum possible penalty. Defendants who pleaded guilty get credit for acceptance of responsibility. Judges also consider criminal history and the personal characteristics of each defendant, including age and health. There are no mandatory minimum sentences for any of these crimes. Donald Trump is not going to prison, believe it or not. That's a stipulated fact. I'm Tyrone Bowman. Never surrender, never quit.